my pleasure on tonight to introduce Mr. Ben Simon, who is the co-founder and CEO at Imperfect Produce, America's leading consumer brand for, yes, ugly produce. Imperfect is on a mission to find a home for the 6 billion pounds of produce that is currently wasted per year because it falls short of grocery store standards for beauty. Previously, Ben founded the Food Recovery Network in 2011 while he was a student at the University of Maryland College Park. Under his leadership, FRN became the largest student movement against hunger with chapters at, I believe now, over 200 different colleges. Food Recovery Network and Imperfect are frequently featured in media outlets like the New York Times, NPR, MSNBC, and Upworthy. Ben is a Forbes 30 Under 30 social entrepreneur and won a Do Something award on VH1. When not selling funny-looking produce, he enjoys Settlers of Canton, pickup volleyball, as well as cooking. He is passionate about inspiring the next generation of leaders, as well as social innovators, to develop their own path towards changing the world. And yes, I've had this question a few times already this week, but Ben does have a girlfriend. Ladies and gentlemen, give me a round of applause as we welcome Mr. Ben Simon.
Is this mic on? All right, thank you so much for the introduction, and especially for the last line, putting that back in there. Didn't think you were gonna do it, but I'm glad that you did. Hello, everybody. Real quick, how many folks were at the dinner just now? Awesome. And how many folks are involved in campus in some way in terms of like an extracurricular activity or a club? Awesome. So I'm here because I was in your guys' shoes like 6, 7 years ago. That was me. I was that kid who was just super involved on campus. I was in lots of different student organizations and stuff like that. And some folks were asking me over dinner, what was my major in college. And for me, it was actually government and politics. But I basically am doing something completely unrelated. And the reason I'm doing that and the reason that, I've come as far as I have in, a short amount of time since graduating from college is because of those student organizations that I was involved in and all the skills that I was able to learn through that. So I'm gonna take you guys kind of through my journey from where I was in your guys' shoes 6, 7 years ago when I was, going to events like this around campus, watching speakers. I was involved, I was racing around trying to get to my different student organizations I was involved in, to where I am now, and hopefully through that also school you guys on food waste and tell you guys about that as well. So let me just grab this clicker. Here we are, here we have it. Get started right here. So what is up with food waste? Am I right? It's just blowing up. We had the Pope talking about it. We got Obama talking about it. The U.S. government made a goal to reduce food waste by 50% from 2015 to 2030. Really ambitious goal there, right? Cut food waste in half in 15 years. And then probably, most notable of all, John Oliver is talking about food waste. That's when you know it's a really big issue. It's on John Oliver's radar. This is what he had to say about one of the things he had to. Did anybody see the piece? Any chance? Yeah? A few people? It was really did a good job. He said the things I've been trying to say about food waste for a long time, but in a much funnier way. Thank you, John. So this is me. Like I said, I'm you, you're me. I was in your shoes like 7 years ago. We even have the same eyes. So this was me 6, 7 years ago. I was a college student. I went to University of Maryland College Park. And, I was sort of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted to be involved in. And I ended up getting involved in different social justice clubs, trying to make an impact on the environment, trying to raise some awareness about hunger, doing some canned food drives, and stuff like that. And I would say that, I was majored in government and politics, but I never was a standout student by any means. I was probably pretty much like average student exactly, except the thing about me was I was always late. was like what my teachers knew me for. I was the guy showing up in the back. Actually, I would go to the front. I'd be the guy who was always 3 minutes late consistently, but would go straight to the front. And then perk up, really, so nobody could say anything, because you're just actually taking notes, and I'm like, all right, he's late, but I guess he's gonna pay attention now, so we'll go with it. But so I was a government and politics student, and like I said, I think I didn't necessarily find myself through my major, but I found myself through some of the work that I did outside of that. And just to kind of move forward a little bit in the story, this is also me wearing a wig and trying to tell people about food waste. And I just heard from a faculty member that there was something similar going on, where they were showing a bunch of food that was getting wasted, and it's really nasty and really smelly also. But that's what we were doing. We created this event, and we called it a GMAS, Grandmothers Making Action. And the whole point of the event was, let's dress up as grandmothers and put on some Jewish grandmother accents and tell people about food waste and not, chide them not to waste their food and stuff like that. And that was the in. And so I was also joking at lunch or at dinner. I kind of got my start by being that guy who was like, wait, you gonna finish that? Can I have that if you're not gonna finish it? So that was kind of how I learned about food waste and kind of got excited about it. And after some time, basically saw this in the dining hall, except at closing time. 9 p.m., they're closing the stations down, and I kind of heard some rumors that a lot of extra food was getting wasted at the end of the days from my friends who worked in food service. And I worked in food service, and just show of hands, how many people have worked in food service and kind of seen, you've sort of probably seen, actually keep your hand raised if you've seen what I'm talking about here. At the end of the day, you'll have a station that, they prepared extra food, and they just had to throw it away. And so, for me, it was actually a station of pizza. There was half of it was left, it was pizza and pasta, and it was 9 p.m., and I had to ask them, I was like, wait, are you gonna throw that away, or what do you guys do with it at the end of the day? And the guy's like, yeah, man, my manager just tells me I just gotta throw it away. And I found that kind of hard to believe, especially given how much hunger was going on just down the street from us. And that, statistically speaking, it's I believe 1 in 6 Americans struggle with food insecurity. And, University of Maryland's based in the DC area, there's a big hunger problem. And I said, how can we be wasting all this food at the same time? So we met with our director of dining services, and we convinced them to start letting us recover that food. And we basically, it's this glorified Tupperware operation, where we basically just go in the back, we work with dining services, we scoop that extra food into pans and donate it. And we're like, all right, let us donate it, put it in these pans, and drive it down to local soup kitchens and homeless shelters. It was the easiest thing on earth. But we were recovering 200 pounds of food every single day. And in our first semester, we did 15,000 pounds of food. So we really started getting the idea. It was wow, I think one of the craziest things that we had to grapple with was that this hadn't been done. It'd been done on other colleges and in a lot of cities and stuff like that. It was wow, how many decades back was University of Maryland just throwing all this food away when it's so easy to be donated? And that, really kind of caught us off guard. So we started to kind of think bigger and say, all right, well, if UMD was wasting all that food, how many other colleges are also wasting all that food? And I called my buddy up, Ben Chesler. He's also a Ben. And he was a freshman at Brown University. And I said, why don't you look into this in your dining hall? And for them, it was even easier than us to start it up. And a month after I called him, he had already donated his first 500 pounds of food through Food Recovery Network. So we could right away start to see it had this huge potential to start to scale. And so we started calling our friends at other colleges around the country, Facebook messaging them. We'd see them at home over winter break, and then they'd go back, and we'd kind of coach them through starting a chapter on their campus. And it started to spread kind of virally. It went from, my school to his school to 4 schools to 7 to 13. And then we got a call one day. Got a call from a producer for the Melissa Harris Perry show on MSNBC. Not around anymore, but it was a great show on Saturday afternoons. And they called us up and they said they wanted to do a segment on us for their like Foot Soldier of the Week thing. They did it, and that day and that week, we got like 25 applications from students to spread this to their colleges across the country. We took a lot of them up on it. We coached them through. A few weeks later, they brought us back onto the show to go live in person to do a longer segment on us to show the impact that they made, actually just by a little thank you note that I wrote to the producers that thank you for doing that, because now we have 25 students that we're working with to help to spread this to their campuses. That got us a bunch of applications, and we just kept growing. And basically, long story short, and then we went on to Do Something Awards with Matthew Morrison from Glee. That was pretty cool. I got a shoe trophy. I broke the wing off that shoe trophy on accident and had to glue it back on. So we basically, these are some of the students in our movement, and, we started, again, laser, over here on the East Coast and went up to Brown and, popped over there and started, they called a friend at University of Michigan. It really went viral, and, at this point, it's at like 200-some colleges across the country. I believe it's the largest national food waste nonprofit. It's a staff of 15. We ended up getting some funding from the Sodexo Foundation. Sodexo is a big food service company, do the food service at a lot of colleges across the country. And they were kind of crazy because they basically called us up one day and decided to invest $300,000 in us when we were still students. I was like, damn, looked at that later, I was like, man, that's kind of a risky bet. I don't treat my money that way. I had to think about that. But we ended up, taking that money and being able to hire full-time staff, and this is some of our staff right there, a staff of about 15. And that was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, was to be able to come up with an idea, rally a few of my friends around that on my local campus level, be making such an impact that some other students were excited about it, and then kind of have that spiral up and snowball up to where it is now. And so I ended up passing the torch at FRN, but it's still a great organization and doing great work and continuing to grow. Basically, so that was 4 years of my life, and through that experience, I ended up learning a ton about food waste. So as I mentioned, 1 in 6 Americans and 1 in 5 kids are struggling with food insecurity. At the same time, we have 40%, almost half of our food is going to waste every single year. It's really like an epidemic. It's really crazy when you think about it, that we can have those two problems side by side happening together. So that was one of my biggest takeaways. Another major takeaway from working at FRN for that long was, food waste isn't just one problem. People think about food waste like it's this monolith, okay, it's that problem of food waste. But when you really take a closer look at it, it's actually probably hundreds or even thousands of littler problems that need to be solved all throughout the supply chain, from the moment that that food is grown to the moment that it ends up on your plate not being eaten, and I'm asking you if I can finish your sandwich for you. So it's basically this huge amalgamation of issues, and all these different entrepreneurs are kind of flooding into this space and creating really cool solutions around solving this food waste issue. So that was the other thing I learned, and I learned specifically how much food is getting wasted on farms. It's a lot. That is not a salad. That is actually a landfill in Salinas, California, which is the salad bowl of America. And yeah, it's a lot. So it basically, the amount of food getting wasted on farms is estimated by the Natural Resources Defense Council to be 1 in 5 fruits and vegetables, period. They just don't make it off the farm and get wasted right then and there, largely because they're too ugly for the grocery store. Sometimes it's also because of surpluses in the market, but largely because it's too ugly. And so we looked at this issue, and I honestly, it was one of those things, really, 20%, that seems like kind of an unbelievable statistic. And I met this guy, Ron Clark, who ended up becoming my third co-founder for Imperfect. And I met Ron at this food waste conference 2 years ago, and he totally blew my mind, showed me these farms, took me out on a tour with him. I went to these huge packing facilities like this one, that's the outside of it, where they take all the raw product from farms, and they'll put them in these 50,000-pound trucks and haul them from the farm over to this packing facility where they'll just dump all the carrots in or whatever it is, and they'll wash it, and they'll sort through it, and they'll grade it. And that's how you then get the USDA standard on it, the number 1 standard, the number 2, there's number 3. So basically, I went to these facilities, I went to 5 of them, and I was just totally shocked that they could just be wasting this much of it. And I talked to some farmers, and I was specifically with this kiwi and persimmon farmer, and all of the stuff, I walked through the facilities, half a million pounds per day that they do of kiwis and persimmons. It's like, wow, that's a lot. And I asked him, okay, 500,000 pounds, that's a lot. What percentage would you say gets rejected? And we were standing there by this bin that was getting filled up slowly just by all these kiwis were spitting out into it that were double kiwis, 2 kiwis that had naturally grown together in the growing process. I asked him, I was like, okay, well, what percentage is that you have to sort out and sell to animal feed for 1 cent per pound? And he was like, about 15% or so is byproduct. And it really caught my ear, that word specifically. It's like, wow, he's really calling it byproduct. It's been so many decades of that happening that it's just gotten into, it's like this term he inherited. It's just an industry term, byproduct. And it's totally good produce that's just getting wasted by the truckload and truckload. I mean, it's estimated by Feeding America is actually estimated to be 6 billion pounds of produce every single year. Do we have anyone studying food security or nutrition? Anybody? No, nobody. All right. Oh, someone in the back. All right. But basically, you would know if you'd taken a class in it or learned about it, that hunger is not really a shortage of calories. It's really a shortage of healthy calories, a shortage of nutrition. You can eat a lot of fast food and still kind of be hungry because you can be hungry and obese at the same time. And so, especially it's that much produce. Having been in the nonprofit space, working with a lot of soup kitchens, stuff like that, the thing they all want is produce. They can't get produce. And I'm like, man, you're just going to be wasting, look how many carrots that is. You're wasting a fifth of those carrots. So to be a closer up on the carrots, you can kind of see the natural diversity in terms of how they grow. Some are really thick, some are really thin, some are kind of crooked, some are a little bit broken, some are discolored. That's just how carrots grow. But when you get that, 2-pound pack of carrots in the grocery store, do you see that? Or do they all look exactly the same? It is exactly the same. So, it's really tough. And basically, I'm just like, man, a major buzzkill right now. You guys are like, damn, that's depressing. I'll lighten up, trust me. Can anyone guess what's up with these cauliflower? Someone who wasn't at dinner. I'm not leaving this slide till someone guesses. Also, I can use the laser pointer towards you. Just, what about you? Come on, guys. What about you in the front? Too yellow? Yeah, too yellow. Yeah, too yellow. Just a little bit, though. You can barely see it. Right there. Just a little bit of yellowing. Someone who wasn't at dinner, you know what causes the yellow? The sun. Because God forbid the sun actually shines on some produce. It gives it a little bit of a suntan. But seriously, I've been to cauliflower fields and talked to the farmers where they'll say 30, 40% of their fields they'll just walk over it. They won't harvest it. Cauliflower is a field-packed product, unlike the carrots that I showed you in the last slide, where it's a shed-packed product. They put in that 50,000-pound, big truck, they'll dump it into this packing facility where they'll sort it and pack it and grade it. They grade it right on the field. So if it doesn't meet the standards, if it has that kind of yellowing, they'll pass right over it. And they put the final cauliflower that you'll see in a grocery store case in the case and wrap it in the cellar wrap right there in the field. So, a lot of this stuff, and it really depends. Some of the product that we sell does have a processor market. Citrus tends to have a very heavy processor market, especially Valencia oranges. Apples tend to have a pretty good processor market for apple juice. But like kiwis don't have a processor market. Persimmons don't. Cauliflowers don't really. Eggplant. We get avocados that are, I said avocados, organic avocados. We get them, and they would have gone to waste because they're too small. These little baby avocados, and they're beautiful. So we love imperfections. So we basically, me and Ron and Ben, were like, let's get together. Let's sell this ugly produce. Let's wrap it in some cool branding so people think it's cool, and tell the underdog story of this ugly produce. Why does it have to go to waste? Just because it looks funny. It doesn't. So basically, we try to have fun with it. We try to have fun with the branding. And that's what we do. We sell people big boxes of it for less than grocery store prices. And that's the biggest thing that I think has helped our business take off with Imperfect, is actually being able to sell it for cheaper. It's like about 30 to 50% cheaper before the delivery fee, which is a few dollars. So it's a pretty big discount. And we're now up to like 16. Oh, man, I've had this laser pointer on the whole time. How long have I had that? Do you guys see that? This laser pointer on? So we've gotten pretty big with Imperfect. We're about a year and a half old. 2 summers ago, I went out there. I'm from Maryland originally. My co-founder, Ben, is from Boston. And me and him, I actually drove across the country. We went out there to California, and we basically formed this company with Ron, who you saw in the other picture, to basically sell people ugly produce. And we sell big boxes of it. And it's going well for us. We're up to like 15,000, 16,000 active subscribers. So that means everybody gets a box dropped off on their doorstep each week. So this was just on social media. And there's been like all this buzz on social media. And not just about us and our brand, but also just about ugly produce worldwide. It's been one of the top phenomenons in terms of food. It's just people posting funny memes and stuff like this. And it's also been great for us to be part of that wave and kind of the one leading that wave here in the States. And that's actually our produce. Those are the kiwis. Seriously, those are from that same grower. Those kiwis and those persimmons, we made them stars. We made them VIPs, very imperfect produce. We pulled out the red carpet, and they're literally on last March, so exactly a year ago, we're on the cover of National Geographic. Got a bunch of other press. Sorry to these guys. Couldn't make the cover. Sorry, guys. Not everybody can be on. This is our team. Great team. This is actually last September. I was like bummed that we didn't have a more up-to-date team photo, but we've like doubled in size since last September. We're up to about 50 full-time people, about 100 if you count our drivers. And it's going really, really well. And we started in the Bay. I think it's the most popular online grocery delivery service in the Bay. We have like something like 2% of all of the people who live in Oakland and Berkeley as customers. And we just launched in Los Angeles like 6 weeks ago. So a few takeaways for me throughout this process and stuff that I've learned. So first of all, like I said, there's a food recovery revolution waiting to happen because the issue of food waste is so big that, again, you got the Pope, you got Obama, you got John Oliver talking about it. There's so many different sort of like smaller problems. Like there's one entrepreneur leading a company called Lean Path, and they're also a mission-driven food waste company like us. Their business model is to have a tracking system that's a combination of a hardware, like a scale that you put the food on, and then also a software package that goes along with that helps companies like Sodexo or like this campus's cafeteria measure how much food they're wasting. And what gets measured gets managed. You'll hear that phrase a lot. So they're basically able to, cut down on this over time and set goals for themselves and stuff like that to save themselves a lot of money to cut food waste from the source. There's so many companies. There's a company called 0% in Chicago that is doing super cool stuff. They've got like a food recovery app, and they've got, I think, like, maybe 500 or so different restaurants on. And again, they're like us. They're mission-driven, and they're a company. So they're trying to be able to generate the money that they need to continue to do the good work through the money that through what they charge their customers. So they charge like bakeries, like Starbucks and stuff like that. There's a really small fee each month to, again, be able to recover that food and then also track it and have a dashboard for them so that they can help to be better at predicting how much bread or whatever or how many pastries they're making and selling at Starbucks. So there's so many cool startups, but I know there's going to be so many more. I'll tell you that, like, I came into the food waste space like 6-7 years ago. I already feel like the OG food waste guy because I like been in there, like everyone else. Like when I went in there was like 5 companies or 5 nonprofits that were doing things in food waste, and we all knew each other. Now there's hundreds. There literally are hundreds, and I can't keep track of them. Can't pretend to know every new thing that's coming up, but every new day there's an article about it. There's, foundations are moving into this space to open up financing. There's venture capital moving into this space. There's just so much innovation that's happening, and that still will happen around food recovery. The second takeaway is that, it's a growing planet, and we're already having trouble feeding everybody. We have 1 billion people on this planet who are struggling with hunger, some of them in, severe famine. There's a lot of smart people saying we need to start changing some things fast or it's only going to get worse because the population is still exploding on Earth just in terms of a lot of developing countries and stuff like that. We're set to go up to 9 billion people in 2050, and we're going to need a significant amount more food if we're going to feed everyone. But yet there's not that much extra land, so how do we do it? And there's been a huge amount of resources and discussion around how can we increase crop yields and what are technologies out there that can help us to get more out of the resources that we have to produce more food. But what I'll argue is that while that's also important and we do definitely need to do that, you can't have a discussion around feeding the global population without also mentioning reducing food waste. It's estimated by the NRDC that if we were to reduce food waste by just 15%, it would literally be enough to feed 25 million Americans full diet. And there's I think about 48 million Americans struggling with hunger. So half of America's hungry, feeding the full diet of them if we just reduce food waste by 15%. And the same thing goes globally. We literally grow enough food every year to feed everyone on planet Earth. And America grows enough food every year to feed everyone in America. And yet, there are a lot of people going hungry. So why? The real answer is that hunger is not a food shortage problem in America. It's not a food shortage problem. It's a food distribution problem. We're getting the logistics of it wrong. We're putting food into trash cans when we need to be feeding people. And it's totally reckless. And the hope on the horizon is that these are all solvable problems, just like I said on the last slide. And then the third takeaway is that fighting food waste is fighting climate change. So food is actually the #1 driver of global resource overconsumption. It's basically the biggest industry across the world still. It makes sense that it is, right? Everybody eats food every single day. And so when you think about climate change, what kind of images do you guys think of? Melting ice. What else? Deserts, droughts, yeah, absolutely. And in terms of kind of the image that I think of when I think of kind of like people fighting climate change, you think of something like this, right? Basically, people, scrappy activists that are, putting themselves in between, a ruthless corporation that's trying to take resources out of the earth and, pollute the earth and the earth itself. And so, I think that's certainly a big part of it is clean energy, but I think an equally big part of it is food waste. It's almost as big just in terms of if you think about every single thing that goes into producing that food just for it to go to waste. The soil, the water, the land, the energy that goes into it, the labor that goes into it, all of the transportation, and then not to mention just the fact that if you do have a lot of food that just gets dumped into a landfill like I showed you a few slides ago, that food actually just releases methane gas right there. And so methane gas is 21 times more harmful than carbon dioxide towards climate change. But that's what happens when you just release food into the landfill. So, I think people are finally starting to see that you can't have a conversation around hunger without a conversation around food waste, and you can't have a conversation around climate change without a conversation around food waste. And so, to close, I would just say that hopefully, with any luck, part of the face of fighting climate change can not only be, this sort of win-lose proposition of kind of us versus them, how can we course correct on evil corporations, but also a win-win of, this guy. Who's against this guy? Everybody loves this guy. So that's what I'll close on, and I'll just say thank you, and we can open it up to Q&A. All right, thank you.